trust me, I'm about to get in. I'm about to get in.
Push up, put a light out when we get life on the road again. Life on now. Make up between it, it's a toast.
James-Hill presents Creative's Corner.
Yeah, I said it and I meant it.
This piece is called Anticipating Equilibrium. This piece is basically about this piece is titled Anticipating Equilibrium, and it's dealing with or trying to address the issues or the issue of the constant struggles that we will face in life. It's made from welded steel. Two figures wrestling. One figure is tossing the opponent, but while the opponent is being tossed, the opponent is making preparation to have at least some kind of a safe landing, taking countermeasures for the blow that was dealt by his opponent. This tries to mirror what will happen to us throughout the process of life. As I grow older, I now come to realize that life is a constant series of struggles. We are going to be tossed or thrown by life, in different ways, and unfortunately in different severities. Sometimes it will be emotional turmoil, sometimes it will be health issues, sickness, sometimes it will be death. But one thing that we can be certain of is that life is going to throw a challenge at us in different ways and in different measure. While we are being thrown or being tossed by life, I think we should try to navigate what we're going through, because based on how we deal with what life throws at us will determine if it makes us or if it breaks us. Once we have come out of the challenge that life has thrown at us, we find some sense of balance or some sense of equilibrium, and then we prepare, or I think we should prepare and get ready for the next challenge that life is going to throw. Hopefully, when we have come to the end of our life, which I think is just one plane of existence, when we come to leaving this plane of physical existence, hopefully we will have figured out enough to pass on some information to someone that's here and leave this plane of physical existence with a sense of equilibrium. So hence the title, Anticipating Equilibrium. This piece is the fruit of my labor for my second semester at CCSU, where I'm studying art education with sculpture at my main area of emphasis. And for this piece, I want to thank Professors Vincente Garcia and Professor Craig Friedrich for their guidance and guiding me through the creative process while allowing me to express my idea and my interpretation of the piece. So that this is just the fruit of the creative process. This piece is titled "On the Shoulders of Giants." This piece now is the genesis of the technique, that I developed out of necessity. Materials were limited. I had rebar and wire, and I was experimenting around with different techniques. First deciding how to do the sculpture, and this was the process. I had some sketches, and I wasn't really sure which one to start with. And Professor Friedrich was going through my sketches, and we were discussing them. There was one that I had that I actually did that sketch on the bus on my way to school. And I said, okay, I'm going to give this one a try. And I said, okay, yes, I think you should really try this one. And I decided to. So the process got started, and I wasn't really sure where it was going until I started figuring out the technique. Strangely, I actually started working from the feet up, and then it evolved into what we have here, and it ended up being taller than I expected it to be, but hence the final product. Now, on the Shoulders of Giants is basically paying homage to anyone who is helping someone, whether a group or an individual is helping another group of persons or another individual to achieve their goals. It speaks though specifically to like a generation of people making sacrifices that will benefit the generation that comes after them. And I try to capture the essence of that in showing this figure at the base, positioning in a way that will enable the figure on top to basically grow from him or her, and then develop into this being that is reaching to their highest potential. As you can see, the figures are interconnected, where the arm forms the leg, and the leg is attached to the shoulder, standing on the shoulder of giants, playing on the title. So it's helping one group or an individual to reach their full potential through sacrifice. I remember my grandmother and my grandfather telling me about the sacrifices that they made and how things were like in the 1930s and 40s. They were basically coming from, basically in the thick of imperialism and colonialism. My grandmother worked on colonial plantations, breaking stones to ensure that the next generation could go forward, and what they were paid was not even enough to buy food. My grandfather worked in the sugar factory. He was very technically, he was a skilled millwright. However, you still would not be given all that you earn on, just having to deal with issues of race and what was the common or dominant practice at that time. But when I got a little older and I started traveling, I realized that this experience was not just unique to the Black community. It was basically the struggle of everybody, with the exception of a few wealthy people in the upper echelon of societies around the world. Most of us are basically just trying to make our way or to get ahead in life. And the generation before has to struggle and sacrifice to enhance the quality of life for the next generation coming after them. So it's a story that is unique, that is not unique to any specific group or ethnicity of people. It is a struggle of us all. And the piece is just to pay homage to all those that have sacrificed in order to help the next generation or someone else to go forward. And I just want to also take this opportunity to give a special shout out to my art teacher, Mr. Joseph Britton, who had been very instrumental in guiding me and helping to motivate me to pursue my artistic passion. He always reminded me that, okay, I am talented, but I must work hard and try to do my best. And so, as I make progress, I am today standing on his shoulder. And I hope that as I continue to grow and excel, I will now be the shoulder for someone else to stand on and reach to their potential. So that's basically the essence of this piece. Yeah, standing on the shoulders of giants.
Welcome on another episode of Creatives Corner. I'm your host, James Dale, and with me today is a very special guest, Mr. Horace. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, and thank you for having me.
And thank you for answering my invitation. Horace is a Jamaican-born sculptor. I met him on the bus line, and he had one of his pieces, and it was a very large metallic sculpting pieces. How did you get to become or pick up sculpting?
Sculpting. I've always had the desire to be a sculptor, and I've been in art basically my whole life. I've always been drawing ever since I was a child, making things. Then I was really inspired and motivated by my high school art teacher. He was like a mentor, and still is. Mr. Joseph Britton. Salute to him in Jamaica.
Big up yourself, Mr. Britton.
Yeah, he's retired now, but still, we're still in touch.
Okay.
So I decided to become an art teacher as a result of his influence on me, and eventually that dream materialized. But at the time, I was basically working as a goldsmith
Okay.
because I apprenticed out of high school with the said formerly mentioned Mr. Britton. He taught me, goldsmithing, the fundamentals. I worked as a goldsmith for a while. Then when I went to college, I majored in, goldsmith and fine arts, but goldsmithing, jewelry being my major. But still, I was always dabbling with sculpture, making little figures. But they were maybe no more than 2-3 inches at the most. And at one point, I kind of went a little bit up and I did one about 8-9 inches. So I was always like a sculptor at heart. And then moving now to the States, because as I mentioned earlier, I taught for a while. I taught art in Jamaica at several high schools, and I also did a teaching stint in Central Asia for about 6-7 years thereabout. Went back home after the pandemic. Things were kind of rocky, and I decided that okay, I'm gonna try to migrate to the States. And school was one of the easiest ways to get in, so I applied for school, was accepted. So I'm at Central now, but my focus now is sculpture. So my main form of artistic expression now is sculpture. And it's like, I would say, a dream come true because now I'm connecting the dots. When I look back, I remember I was home and there was this program on TV. It was actually a CPTC program. And then I was maybe about age 10 or 11. And I was watching a program on television, and there was this sculptor on it, Mr. Raymond Watson. And they were showing his sculpture, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And, I totally forgot about that experience. But I connected, when I started doing sculpture again, is when that memory came back to me and said, that's where it started.
Right.
So it started from,
Wee bit.
Wee bit. But now I am actively working on materializing that dream of becoming a sculptor, and metal being my favorite mode or favorite material or medium to work with. And it's like a transition from jewelry to sculpture. So it's like working from small, tiny objects now on a much larger scale.
That's great. And one of the things that is good with your story is that art and your passion took you from home in Jamaica to Asia to the States, and you are living your dream, and you are giving back to the next generation of potential artists, professional or otherwise, to do the very same. Because I'm a writer, and art expression is the greatest form of therapy an individual can do. So is there any other material that you use other than metal to do your sculpting?
Yeah, most definitely. I carve. I actually work. I work in wood as well. So I carve, and I work in clay. I model and stuff. But I think I'm most at home or most comfortable working with metal. And this now I'm a little older and maybe I'm a little more sensitive. I understand now the connection of things that are, in your lineage, in your gene pool. My grandfather, my paternal grandfather, unfortunately I never met him, but he was a blacksmith. He was the metal man for the region back in Jamaica in his day. And I used to find like some of his old tools around the yard, and like old little pieces of Smith's skull. So I would, like the Smith's skull, it would take a long while. But eventually, once it got hot, it was blazing, then I would have these metal tongs, and I was always toying around. So working with metal is actually how do I put it? It's in my DNA.
in your DNA. So that is the one way that you connect yourself with your grandfather. Then you say your grandfather
Yes.
was a blacksmith.
Yeah.
For those who don't know the process of blacksmithing, like you so eloquently put, could you break down the process of black smithing from the beginning to the end with all the tools and all the components that it takes to actually make a piece, whether it's great or small?
Well, in terms of blacksmithing, I can only express knowledge from a layman's perspective, and so based on mostly what I've watched on YouTube or wherever, and watching the smiths at work. But it's basically the process of manipulating metal into whatever desired form you want it. And it involves a lot of forging, where you basically heat the metal until it becomes malleable or ductile. And I can just quickly explain those technical terms. When metal is malleable, you can manipulate it in sheet form. And in terms of ductile or ductility, you can manipulate the metal in the form of like tubes and wires and stuff like that. So it's basically heating and manipulating or forming, or as blacksmiths term, forging metal into whatever desired shape you want it. But you can make tools, you can make weapons or whatever metal implements. And blacksmiths are famous for for showing and stuff like that. And I guess that made my grandfather really popular in his day, because whoever in those days, horse and carriages,
Right.
so his service was really
Needed.
Okay. and in demand. But it's, I guess, the process of manipulating metal into whatever shape or form you want it, in my layman's expression.
Okay. That's more than a layman's term. A layman would be somebody who don't understand, and you fully understand what blacksmithing is because you experienced your grandfather doing it firsthand, and you've done it yourself. So, what was that aha moment for you? Even though you said that it was a mentor of you, or that inspired you to do sculpting, from the moment when you were tinkering or sketching in your notepad to the moment where you saw a load of metal that you wanted to forge into a piece. What was your aha moment?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the piece by Mr. Raymond Watson, who I eventually met, and I did a course with him when I attended Edelman College in Jamaica. So his piece was the first piece that really inspired me, and I think that piece was called First Child, and it's like two figures, I think, two parents kind of holding up a child, almost, I think, as if the child was maybe dying or dead. But even though it was metal and it was supposed to just be frozen and static, it had this sense of movement to it, and he captured the emotions of the people or the figures in metal.
That's good.
But my other moment now came through when I just recently, not this semester, my first semester at Central Connecticut State, I got materials from my sculpture professor, Mr. Craig Friedrich. Shout out to Mr. Craig Friedrich. Really, really motivational, inspiring professor. Yeah, really supporting me and my process, meaning allowing me to work my process, but guiding me, and benefiting from his immense experience. So Professor Friedrich, he said, okay, start something. And I started the process, but kind of was toying around and not really sure what to do. Then I did a series of sketches, a whole bunch of sketches, and some of them I would do while I was on the bus, on the bus. And I showed him some of what I had and showed him a few maquettes I was welding and tinkering around, and he said to me, touch one, and he said, this one. I'm like, really? And he said, yes. this one. I'm like, okay. I said to myself, I wasn't really convinced, but I said,
Right.
Professor knows.
Right, right.
So,
So what kind of metal is it? Aluminum? Is it iron? What metal did you?
at that point, I had not selected the metal yet, but the sketch was approved. And then I got a few pieces of steel in sheet form, but maybe about 1/2 inch wide. And then I had a whole bunch of wire, maybe about 2 or 3 millimeters wide, a whole reel of wire. And then I started basically describing a form, a figure with it working. And then Professor saw it and he said, okay, you're onto something. And I said, okay, no problem. And I kept on working. Now, by the time the sculpture was finished, I had this piece that was like 7.5 feet tall.
That's the piece that I saw.
Yes,
Okay, yeah,
7.5 feet tall. And the professor said to me, like, you're onto something here. Keep working at this. And even I was surprised when I looked at the finished sculpture and I'm like, oh, did I really do this? Because what I basically did was just kind of made a skeleton. And then I basically kind of described the form with just wire going around, wire. And then I kind of following, principles of basic anatomy, but exaggerating a bit. Because, you benefit from being a trained artist and from drawing. So I understood, basic anatomy and stuff like that. But when I started this and went through the process, and when it was finished, I'm like, oh, did I really do that?
Oh yes, you skipped from you had the idea and you put it on paper. It was already done.
I said, did I really do that? Yeah. And that was like the next moment now where I could say to myself, I'm a sculptor.
Yeah, you are.
I am a sculptor, and Professor said to me, you're onto something.
So what is the name of that piece?
That piece, I call that piece On the Shoulders of Giants. And the inspiration from that piece is basically, okay, no matter how successful we are or how successful we become, somebody helped us to get there. Somebody helped us. And I remembered my grandmother, and my grandfather, these are my maternal grandparents. They would tell me stories of the early days and what they went through, because remember, they were coming right off the edge of basically slavery.
Right.
And they told me of the things they went through, and I'm like, really? And I would go home and my grandma would say, oh, you bought a shirt again. And she would say, do you know that we had to sew our clothes over and over and over and over? And I'm like, really, Mama?
Yeah.
And she said, yes, that's what we went through. And my grandfather told me of his experience working in the sugar factory. And even though he was a skilled, basically, millwright, working with machines and repairing and fixing stuff like that, he still really wasn't given the due that was due to him. And they had to put up with a lot.
A lot of racism and prejudice.
Believe me.
So you culminated all of the years of struggle that he went through as an engineer, because that's what he was.
Exactly, that's
and
what he was.
He graduated into a blacksmith, and he got a little bit more notoriety.
No,
and
that's my paternal grandfather.
Two different persons.
Yeah,
okay.
He was a blacksmith.
Okay.
My maternal grandfather by my mother's side was the engineer in the sugar factory. Okay,
so you have two ends of it, because you are an illustrator.
Yes.
As well as a blacksmith, so both lineages is inside.
Yes, it's actually coming from both ends of the family. So, but then I remember the sacrifices that they made, and I before I moved to Central Asia in terms of working and living there, I was selected to go on a course, a jewelry production course in China in 2011. And it was about 5 months. Went, got leave from school, went on the course, came back home, and I can't forget my grandmother said, look at my grandchild. Because my grandmother never left the island.
Right.
And while we had lots of relatives, like in the diaspora, like, in America here, in Canada, I think some in England, but China was different.
Mm-hmm.
And she lifted her eyes and she said, "Thank you, Papa Jesus." For those who don't understand, she was saying, "Thank you, God. Look what's happening to my generations."
So the struggles that they went through will come out to the next generation.
So that's what the piece is about, you know. Whoever is making a sacrifice
is standing on the shoulders of giants.
We're all standing on the shoulders of giants. So maybe it's your teacher, maybe it's your professor, maybe it's a friend, but somebody's helping somebody to get to the next level, especially by making a sacrifice.
Yeah, so, and inspire somebody to aspire to do something more in life. So while you were in Central Asia, did you learn the language, or did you have to learn the language?
I didn't have to, but for the sake of functionality, I did pick up a fairly functional bit of Russian. Maybe you could say I'm intermediate. So I still speak a little Russian. It's rusty, but if needs be,
you can help yourself.
Yeah. Even the other day, I ran into someone, and just by chance, I was actually having a very good conversation with them. So but you out of necessity, because you're there, you need help to get around. Sometimes
you have to learn the language.
You have to,
as in Rome.
So people tend to language. Nah. If you're in an environment, it's not as tricky. But when you're here trying to learn from a book, then that's when it gets complicated.
Right.
But you're there, it's all around you. It's a whole lot easier to learn a language like that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So where can people find your pieces?
Okay, my work is on Instagram at Tony Sculpts. That's TonySculptz. And on Facebook at Tommy Miller. I don't think I've uploaded images to Facebook yet. I'm not big on social media, honestly. But I've been told over and over, look, you have to do this.
You need to.
So
that's why we're here, to get you the exposure that you need.
So I started my Instagram account maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I uploaded some images. I haven't at all mastered using the platform yet, but I'm just putting images up so people can see. And I'm going to upload images on Facebook. So at Facebook, it's Tommy Miller. And on Instagram, it's Tony Sculpts. And maybe I can leave a card.
Sure.
For visuals,
So is there any exhibit that somebody can physically go and see your pieces live in color?
Well, the two pieces, the two major pieces are, basically two only large scale sculptures I've done so far. They're currently on show in downtown New Britain at the Anvil Building. So the Anvil Building is on West and Main Street, and that's a little bit across the street from the Gallery 66. That opportunity was presented to me again with the help of my sculpture professor, Professor Friedrich, with his collaboration with Miss Adrian Elliott of the Gallery 66. He gave me a contact to her, and
I know Miss Adrian. She's a Central Connecticut alumni as well.
Yes, she is. Yes. So shout out to Adrian Gallery 66. And thank you for giving me the opportunity. So my sculptures are currently at the Anvil Building.
Okay. So is there anything you want to leave my my audience with? The floor is yours. Any words of wisdom or anything for the people?
I can only speak from experience, and follow your dreams. Follow your dreams and keep working. Don't quit. You would be surprised to see what can happen once you've started a process. I've been fortunate, blessed, privileged to have some experience. And as I was mentioning earlier, you never know where where life will take you once you've started on a process, because I started out in Jamaica. Yeah, as I said, I grew up fairly normal, but things were always provided for us. But but I wasn't seeing beyond Jamaica. Just okay, I'm gonna just be in Jamaica. I didn't even plan to go to college, but I did that eventually, and from there, things just kind of, how to say, blossomed.
Mm-hmm.
I went on a course to China, came back to Jamaica, and I moved to that side of the world. Was there for about 6-7 years studying, working, and went back home. Here I am now. I'm in America, another chapter, I guess.
That's great.
And I couldn't predict this. I couldn't.
You wrote a great chapter in your book, and I'm sure there is more chapters yet to come. So, Mr. Horace, I appreciate you coming down and blessing my platform with your presence and what you have done in the world of art and expression.
Yeah.
And you have a lot more sculpting and illustration left inside you, and we can't wait to see you do more things. So this is another episode of Creators Corner. I'm your host, James Dale, and this is Horace. And get down to our Studio 66 down in New Britain to see his piece, and the Anvil Building to see his pieces on the Shoulders of Giants.
And another piece titled Anticipating Equilibrium. So it's on the Shoulders of Giants and Anticipating Equilibrium. And one thing before I go, life is going to throw us challenges. But if we work through the challenges and try to find the right coping mechanisms, I think we can survive.
And on that note, I'm James Dale, and this is Creators Corner. See you on the next one. Thanks for tuning